Welcome to a journey back through time, where we explore the history and architecture of Caerleon Roman legionary fortress, known as Isca Augusta, located in the south of Wales. Caerleon is one of the most remarkable Roman sites in Britain, offering a fascinating glimpse into the lives of soldiers, leaders and civilians nearly 2,000 years ago. Join us as we uncover the story of Caerleon, from its strategic importance in the Roman Empire to its extraordinary military structures, all of which have left a lasting legacy on the landscape. In AD 43, the Roman Empire, led by Emperor Claudius, embarked on the conquest of Britain. The Romans built a series of fortresses across the island to secure their hold and provide a base of operations. One such fortress, Caerleon, was established in AD 75 by the Second Augustan Legion, also known as Legio Secunda Augusta. The location of Caerleon was chosen for its strategic importance. Nestled along the River Usk, it was easily accessible by both land and water, providing the perfect base for controlling southern Wales and surrounding regions. The site was also close to important trade routes, ensuring that the Romans could both defend their territory and oversee regional commerce. At the heart of any Roman military base was the castrum, a well-planned, playing card-shaped military camp. Roman engineers meticulously designed these fortresses to maximize efficiency, security, and discipline. The fortress at Caerleon followed a pattern found throughout the western part of the empire, with a large open space surrounded by impressive walls and gates. The fortress at Caerleon covered around 50 acres, a vast area that housed around 5,000 to 6,000 soldiers at its peak. Its walls, which still survive in parts, were built initially with timber and then in stone, rising up to 15 feet in height. The fortress was further protected by a large ditch, known as a fossa, which encircled the entire site. The gates were strategically placed at each of the four sides, with the main entrance, the Porta Principalis Dextra, facing the River Usk. This allowed for easy access to both the land and the water, facilitating movement of troops, supplies, and communication. Inside the walls of Caerleon, a number of important structures stood, each serving a specific purpose. One of the most notable of these buildings was the Principia, the headquarters of the fortress. The Principia was the heart of military administration and command. It housed the legion's staff, including the commanding officer, and contained important rooms such as the aula for meetings and the Cecellum, a shrine to the Roman gods. Nearby, the Praetorium was the residence of the commanding officer, a lavish structure that was more luxurious than the typical barracks. It offered a sense of prestige and comfort for the officer who oversaw the soldiers in the fortress. Another remarkable feature of the fortress at Caerleon was its baths, or thermae, which were among the most luxurious in Roman Britain. The Romans believed that bathing was not only essential for cleanliness, but also for socializing, relaxation, and even business. The Caerleon Baths complex included hot and cold rooms, steam rooms, and exercise areas. The remains of the baths at Caerleon provide us with a detailed picture of Roman bathing culture. Visitors can still see the elaborate heating systems, known as hypocausts, which channeled hot air beneath the floors to warm the rooms. The baths also featured impressive mosaics, intricate floor designs, and walls that would have once been adorned with colorful frescoes. The Roman army was highly organized, and Caerleon was no exception. Behind the defensive walls, a number of buildings were dedicated to storing supplies and maintaining the army's logistical needs. The horrea, or granaries, were essential for storing grain, which was a staple food for the soldiers. In addition to the granaries, Caerleon also had workshops, or fabricae, where weapons and armor were crafted, and other essential tools for military operations were made. These workshops were vital in ensuring that the soldiers were always well equipped and ready for battle. One of the most iconic structures of any Roman military base was the Roman barracks. These humble buildings were more than just places to sleep. They were the heart of a soldier's life, shaping everything from discipline to daily routines. Let's take a closer look at the fascinating architecture and what life was really like inside a Roman barracks. A Roman fort was a well-organized military complex designed to house hundreds or even thousands of soldiers. The barracks were strategically placed inside the fort to ensure that soldiers were always close to the action and ready for duty. Each barracks building, known as a contubernium, was a long, narrow structure. They were designed to house small groups of soldiers, usually 8 men, who shared their living space in close quarters. These contubernia were designed for practicality. Each was a basic room with enough space for soldiers to sleep, store their personal items, and prepare for the rigors of military life. While it may sound cramped, Roman soldiers had a strong sense of discipline, and order was paramount. Soldiers in a contubernium were expected to maintain a high standard of cleanliness and organization. Life in the barracks was structured. After a long day of marching, training, or guarding the perimeter, soldiers returned to their contubernium to rest, eat, and sleep. Each soldier was assigned a bed, a small space with a simple cot made of wood or canvas. The beds were often stacked close together, making the barracks feel crowded. Despite the lack of privacy, this close living situation fostered camaraderie and team spirit, important qualities for a Roman army that prided itself on discipline and unity. The soldiers would share their meals in the barracks, usually a simple affair of bread, dried meat, and perhaps some vegetables or fruit. They had little time for luxury, and instead, their focus was on the efficiency of their training and the strength of their bonds with one another. Each soldier's gear was essential to his role. Roman soldiers, or legionaries, had a variety of weapons and armor that needed to be stored and maintained. In addition to their personal belongings, the contubernium housed shields, helmets, and swords, all of which had to be kept in good condition. The soldiers' weapons and armor were stored under their beds or hung on the walls. Regular inspections ensured that everything was in top shape. After all, a Roman soldier's life could depend on how well his gear was maintained. The Roman army was known for its discipline, and part of that discipline was ensuring that every piece of equipment was ready for battle at a moment's notice. Barracks weren't just places for rest, they were centers of constant training and preparation. Soldiers spent a significant amount of time practicing drills, marching, and even engaging in mock battles. This ensured that Roman soldiers were always battle-ready, whether on the front lines or in the defense of their forts. The barracks also had space for specialized training. The soldiers would practice using their weapons, learn new formations, and prepare for the challenges of warfare. The focus was on making every soldier an expert in both individual combat and teamwork. While the barracks served as a soldier's home during their time in the army, they weren't all work and no play. Roman soldiers were also expected to keep their minds sharp and their bodies fit, often participating in leisure activities like board games or sports during their free time. So, what can we take away from the Roman barracks? They were far from luxurious, but they were a vital part of the Roman military system. They were designed to foster discipline, teamwork, and efficiency, values that helped make the Roman Empire one of the most powerful in history. At the heart of the Roman legionary fortress stood the main streets laid out in a strict grid. Along the principal east-west road known as the Via Principalis, archaeologists have found the foundations of substantial officers' residences, interpreted as the houses of the military tribunes and other senior officers. These buildings were placed prominently facing the street, giving the tribunes both prestigious frontage and ready access to the fortress's administrative and social center. Their position near granaries and warehouses underscores their role not just as homes, but as centers for logistical control and command within the legionary base. The Roman hospital at Isca Augusta was built in stone in the late 1st or early 2nd century AD. It occupied a quiet corner of the fortress, carefully positioned away from the noise of workshops and parade grounds. The building followed a classic design, a rectangular layout arranged around a central open courtyard that provided light, air, and drainage. Along the surrounding corridors were small wards, likely holding only a few soldiers each, to limit the spread of infection. The centurions' houses of the first cohort at Caerleon Roman fortress were among the most impressive residences inside any legionary fortress in Britain. Built along the Via Principalis, these houses reflected the elevated rank of the first cohort's centurions, the most senior officers below the legionary legate. Unlike the standard barrack blocks of ordinary soldiers, these homes were spacious and carefully planned around a central courtyard. Timber-framed at first and later rebuilt in stone, they featured tiled roofs, plastered and sometimes painted walls, and hypocauste underfloor heating in the principal rooms. Rooms included a formal reception space, tablinum, private sleeping quarters, storage areas, and even small bath suites in some cases. Caerleon is also home to one of the best-preserved Roman amphitheatres in Britain. This impressive structure, capable of holding around 6,000 spectators, was used for a variety of public entertainments, including gladiatorial combat, mock battles, and theatrical performances. The amphitheatre was strategically located near the fortress, making it easily accessible for soldiers and civilians alike. Today, visitors can still walk around the large stone seating area and imagine the excitement that would have filled the air as the crowds cheered during the spectacles. Outside and around the fortress, a civilian settlement grew up, classically referred to in Roman archaeology as a vicus. In the context of a legionary base, this civilian town is often called a canabe legionis and was intimately tied to the life of the army that created the demand for its services. The vicus at Caerleon wasn't an imposed town planned from the outset like the fortress, but rather a spontaneous civilian settlement that grew up in the shadow of military life. As soldiers arrived and the fortress became established, civilians, traders, craftspeople, innkeepers, tavern keepers, entertainers, and others settled just outside the walls to provide goods, services, and comforts. The army did not supply itself. Such settlements were characteristic of Roman military sites across the empire, forming a bustling social and economic zone. The vicus supplied daily necessities: food, drink, textiles, tools, pottery, and other goods, but also social spaces like taverns, workshops, and markets where soldiers and civilians interacted. Roman soldiers, while officially forbidden to formally marry until later in the empire, often formed long-term relationships with local women, and families grew up in the settlement. The civilian settlement would have been a place of cultural blending. Roman religious practices, with altars and offerings to Roman gods, coexisted with native Celtic beliefs, and mystery cults or personal devotional practices may have been part of everyday life. Focused digs in areas beyond the fortress walls, especially along Mill Street and in the southern Canabe, have revealed stone-built structures, domestic buildings, and signs of organized settlement expansion. Trenches opened south of the fortress between the amphitheatre and the river Usk uncovered large courtyard buildings, basilica-like structures, possible workshops, and lead pipe remains. Their sophisticated design suggests that the area may have included higher status spaces or facilities beyond basic housing. Excavation has even revealed the remains of a Roman port facility on the Usk, which would have connected the vicus economy with wider maritime trade and movement of goods. In sum, the vicus at Caerleon was not merely a cluster of houses, but a dynamic urban landscape shaped by military needs, commerce, cultural exchange, and human relationships, a microcosm of Roman Britain beyond the walls of the fortress. Isca Augusta was a fully functioning military hub. At dawn, the fortress came alive to the sound of horn. Soldiers assembled in the central headquarters building, the Principia, where orders were issued and standards were displayed. Patrols were assigned to guard the surrounding countryside, especially important in frontier provinces like Roman Britain, where maintaining control over local tribes required constant vigilance. Small detachments would march out through the fortress gates, traveling along well-engineered Roman roads to man watchtowers, escort supply convoys, or reinforce nearby forts. Training was relentless. In open fields just outside the fortress walls, legionaries practiced formation drills, weapons handling, and construction techniques. Roman military strength relied not only on battlefield skill, but also on engineering expertise. Soldiers regularly built roads, bridges, and defensive earthworks in the surrounding region. When on campaign, they could construct fortified marching camps in a single day, complete with ditches and ramparts. In times of unrest, the fortress served as a launch point for coordinated campaigns. Legionaries would assemble in full kit, helmet, shield, gladius, and armor, before marching in disciplined columns. Cavalry units and auxiliary troops often accompanied them, extending Roman reach into more difficult terrain. Signal systems using horns, standards, and possibly beacon fires ensured communication across distances. In essence, a fortress like Isca Augusta functioned as a self-contained military city, part barracks, part supply depot, part command center, projecting Roman authority across the landscape and anchoring imperial control in a distant province. Today, you can visit Caerleon and see for yourself the amphitheater, Roman walls, barracks and baths, and imagine what life was like 2,000 years ago on this frontier of the Roman Empire.